life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
Welcome in, Husker Rewind, every Sunday at 5 now. It's a new time. They let us go 2 hours. If this is good. If it's bad, we'll probably be canceled midway through this first hour. But we have been on for, 2 months now,
It's
Mike?
been about 2 months.
It's been about 2 months. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. We just rehash everything that's gone on in Husker sports, focusing on Husker football and basketball. And this time of year, definitely some Husker football. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well. I'm a little feeling my age as my brain sometimes says, oh, you know what? You've got a 400 square foot deck. You and your lovely girlfriend can cut half of it off and, take it all out and take it to the curb and get it thrown away and then turn around and have a big concrete thing poured. And I'll have that done, of course. So we started the destruction of the deck. And Tracy and I did this weekend, and ouch.
You feel old?
I do.
You look
feel
fantastic,
very old. Well,
though.
thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Why didn't you just have it done? Why did you hire a contractor?
26,000 reasons.
Okay.
Why?
They wanted $26,000 to redesign your back. Yeah, I think you made the right move. You have that ability. I could go back there and maybe set a fire, and that'd be about the only thing that I would accomplish on something like that. So good for you that you have the ability to rebuild your deck. And for 26 grand, the savings of that, I definitely would. The big news in Husker football this week, I think, was more related to the conference. The Big Ten has signed the richest TV deal in college sports history. 7-year deal worth in the neighborhood. The value, they say, could go as high as $8 billion, but $7 to $8 billion, 100 per school for the Big Ten. And it starts next year in 2023. The deal will feature games on Fox at big noon. Then you'll have games on CBS and NBC later in the day. What does this deal for you mean for Husker football? The future of Husker football. Mike Melby.
That they can get any coach they want in any sport that they want. That literally they can. It's a free for all. I mean, you have an open checkbook essentially. One question I was going to ask you with this, the fun thing to do when Powerball or Mega Millions gets to $1 billion or whatever, right. What would you do if you won the lottery? Well, guess what, Big Ten teams? You won the lottery. Yeah. You're getting $80 to $100 million a year for the next 10 years,
right?
7 years. So like you just won the lottery. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. I think it gives them free reign to get whoever they want to be able to bring in coaching wise. There's zero excuses now as far as
zero excuses.
Yeah. And that's, let's face it. Scott Frost was everybody's choice 5 years ago. I thought it was a great hire. It hasn't worked out the way anybody hoped. And so that could happen. You could have a coach that you think is the home run hire and it just doesn't work out. Well, hopefully this does. And this season's the turnaround and whatever, but you have more freedom then to maybe you cut your losses sooner.
Right. You pay a buyout. Whatever the buyout is, you just pay the buyout.
All of a sudden, you don't need to go to the donors.
That's right.
And say, I need.
I mean, they still will. They're still cheapskates. They don't want to give up any money whatsoever. But I agree with you. It eliminates all the excuses. You brought up the lottery argument, and it came to me. A lot of people that win $100 million in the lottery, it's gone in a couple of years. So money doesn't guarantee you that you're going to be successful. A lot of those lottery winners, again, go back to they NFL guys that have won the lottery have gone broke So it doesn't guarantee it, but it certainly puts you in a better position. And you're talking about the Big Ten and the ACC that can hire, as you mentioned, any coach they want to in any sport and pay. I think what you said makes more sense to me than anything. Is that your patience has got to be gone as well, right? If Nebraska were making, and Nebraska was still making great money through the Big Ten deal, $50 million, but now that doubles to $100 million, maybe you're less likely to, worry about what the donors want and how hard it's going to be to get money out of them to pay off a coach, and you just pay it.
And that's something as well where I truly think that having Trev Alberts as our AD and being the guy that's in charge of that $100 million is pretty important because it's if you had a chancellor or a president who, as we know in the past, that have dabbled in making some changes or forcing some changes in the athletic department, I don't see that happening with Trev.
Yeah.
He's too well respected. He's just too damn good at his job.
Right.
Is the bottom line.
Yeah, I agree.
And so we're fortunate.
Mhm.
I think it could open up a door, unfortunately, for other schools in the Big Ten and the SEC that are going to have all the money, where you may have a non-athletic director. If you don't have an athletic director that is as good as ours, you may have other people calling the shots. And you may have donors that sit there and say, great, you're getting that amount of money, but then what do you need my money for?
Right.
So,
I do want to hit this topic hard for the next 10 to 15 minutes, but first, let's get to the starting gate to demonstrate how many topics we want to get in this show tonight. And it's a lot. It always is. It's the starting gate. You can pot it up anytime you're ready.
Which one?
I don't know. We change positions because I'm always screwing up something in the show.
Probably that one.
Yeah, turn up Adobe. There it is. There you go.
Third time's a charm. No applause, just throw money. A gentleman who writes for the Irish Times named Dave Hannigan wrote a clickbait article about Nebraska football, which he describes to be a lawless, do-anything-to-win, hate-filled institution that is the scourge of all of college football.
Yeah, it's clickbait. It's clickbait. I mean, I'm sure he's accomplished his mission.
Guarantee. Wednesday, LeBron James signed a 2-year contract worth $97 million, includes a player option for 24-25. James is now the highest-earning player in NBA history with the deal, which now surpasses Kevin Durant in total earnings in your NBA career. On Thursday, the Big Ten announced the TV deal. $7 billion, up to 8, over 7 years, $80 to $100 million per school. Nebraska volleyball, preseason #1 team in the ABCA poll. Huskers are one of 3 Big Ten teams in the top 5, one of 4 Big Ten teams in the top 7, and one of 7 Big Ten teams in the top 20. The Reds swept the White in the sold-out scrimmage at the Devaney Center last night. And I know that Skylar Pierce was in town, #1 recruit from, I believe, 2024 class.
Yep. Kansas girl.
Yep. And she's just like, yeah,
This is where it's at.
I think there's a tweet. She goes, I brought my people to see what this is all about. And it just goosebumps.
Consider the practices on a regular basis that they're going to have with all those great talented freshmen. They're going to get better rapidly, too. I think they're going to win their share of scrimmages, inter-squad scrimmages.
Yeah. Definitely. Nebraska baseball announced a 2023 commit. It picked up from a 2-way player, Ian Regal. The Rochester, Minnesota native hit .397, had a 1.25 ERA in 39 innings, and 71 Ks as a junior at Mayo High School this past season as a junior. On Wednesday, Longhorns coach Steve Sarkisian was quoted as saying, the kids in the locker room today knew that not everybody in that locker room last year was all in. They could feel it. They wanted to weed out some of the warts and the bad apples. So it would seem to me that the Huskers have a bunch of stubborn, according to
So you're saying
Narduzzi,
Sarkisian is taking a shot at Nebraska's current quarterback.
I think he's taking a shot at Casey Thompson. So according to Pat Narduzzi, Mark Whipple is stubborn. So Nebraska's team this year is just a bunch of stubborn bad apples with warts, if you ask Pat Narduzzi and Steve Sarkisian.
Woo.
Exactly.
Well, does that concern you at all, or is you just think this guy is a jerk with a history of being a jerk?
Well, what it tells me is I have now zero respect for either one. If you want to have those feelings, or
Right.
that's great, but
yeah,
you
you don't need to say that.
Come on.
If in fact he was, I mean, I didn't necessarily put the 2 and 2 together, but yeah, you would take a shot at your offensive coordinator, Mark Whipple, as Narduzzi did, or your quarterback who was just leaving.
Yeah.
In the case of Casey Thompson, I guess I should have drew the line like that, but I didn't. Maybe I just thought he was talking about the whole culture of Texas football.
I took it as he was kind of aiming at Casey Thompson,
so.
because Casey Thompson was the guy that led the team last year. He was the quarterback for six straight losses at the end of the year.
Yeah. Well, Casey, if you're listening, you're welcome to call in the show and let us know.
He
what
might
you think.
be on a plane right
Steve,
now.
sorry. Oh, that's probably true. Yeah.
Real quick to wrap up the starting gate, Fred Hoiberg announced Ernie Ziegler as the new assistant. According to NU head coach Scott Frost, there are 15 to 20 vomits a day during practice. He did say today that he probably exaggerated. He was just trying to prove the point of how hard the guys are working. Settlement between the NFL, NFLPA, Deshaun Watson, 11-game suspension, $5 million fine. And on Thursday, University of Ohio announced that they are naming the playing surface at Pendon Stadium Frank Solitchfield. He amassed a record of 115 and 82 over 16 seasons. He went 58 and 19 at Nebraska. His teams won 4 MAC division conference titles. They never did win the conference. They went to 11 bowl games in his 16 years.
Yep.
Do you know how many bowl games they went to prior to that as a school?
0.
2. And they were in the 60s.
Well, I know they were terrible for a long. That was considered the worst job in the MAC when Frank took it.
Yeah.
And he rebuilt the culture. And I guess you find out how good you are when you leave, because the moment Frank left, they took a tumble.
They did.
They really miss Frank Solich. I hope Nebraska honors him in some way as soon as this season. Before we can't honor him, because he deserves it.
It's whether he wants to be honored.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. Hey, great idea. Send your student a gift from home with a caretaker package, a care package from Beatrice Bakery. Chances are your student could use a taste of home. Chances are the dining hall doesn't make anything as tasty as this. And for when the dining hall food just doesn't cut it anymore, it's Beatrice Bakery. College is hard. Breakfast should be easy. Big easy do. Beatrice Bakery. Late night of studying. Beatrice Bakery. Pop quiz. Beatrice Bakery. Send your college student a taste of home with breakfast breads from Beatrice Bakery. Choose from their apple strudel, peach strudel, pumpkin strudel, or banana nut loaves, and have them shipped right to their dorm room anywhere in the country. Head over to BeatriceBakery.com to see all of those cakes available, handmade right here in Nebraska. Start the day and the school year off right with the delicious breakfast breads from Beatrice Bakery. Use the promo code back to school for 10% off your order for being a listener of 93.7 the ticket. Beatrice Bakery, good stuff. Really
It definitely is. We've snacked on some stuff from Beatrice Bakery, and for those watching the video stream, I just showed off one of their coffee cakes that look spectacular.
Yeah, are they for us? Because we didn't know. I mean, they were sitting here when we got here, so I mean,
if they accidentally make it out the door when we leave, I'm sorry.
Isn't it just eat it and then ask for forgiveness later?
I think that's what
I just thought that was ours. I guess it wasn't. I apologize. It was delicious, though. The AP Top 25 is out, and Nebraska is not in it. I don't know if you've heard. It's stunning news. Breaking news. Nebraska is not in the AP College Football Top 25. Alabama is ranked number 1. Not a big surprise, followed by Ohio State. Then you've got Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame rounding out the top 5. Then it's Texas A&M 6th, followed by Utah, a bit of a surprise. You got Michigan at 8th. 9th is Oklahoma, and Baylor completes the top 10. Any of those names or their rankings surprise you?
Yes.
Which one?
Several, actually. I am not sold on DJ Ungalele. I cannot pronounce his last name. I'm not going to try. Anyway, the Clemson quarterback.
Yui Ungalele, I believe.
Yeah, Yui Ungalele. I am not sold on him. I get it. Their defense is tremendous. I do not think they should be top 4. I don't think they finish in the top 10. The 2 other schools that I kind of question are Oklahoma, being one. Well, actually 2 of them. No, first of all,
think Nebraska could beat them?
Yeah, I do.
I think that's a close game, like it was last year.
As a matter of fact, later on in the now 2-hour Husker Rewind right here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com, we are going to do some predictions. But I think Notre Dame at number 5 is way overranked. I don't think they finished the season in the top 25. Sorry, Golden Dome fans, but I just don't. Your new head coach is not Brian Kelly. And then ninth in the AP top 25 is Oklahoma. I don't think they finish the season with fewer than 4 losses.
Nebraska did get one vote in the AP top 25. I think it came from Sipple or McEwen. We could ask Sipple when he's on in the second hour.
Yeah.
If that came from him.
So, that's not only did we go 2 hours, we actually got permission to get a guest.
I know he used to get a vote in the AP top 25. I think Sam still does. I'm not sure if Sipple now he's with On3 if he gets a vote or not.
I know Sam does because I read his column on his AP ballot. So I do not believe he ranked Nebraska 25th. I actually know he didn't, but somebody did. And maybe they are in on something. Who knows? Let's be honest. If Nebraska winds up 9-3 this year, even 8-4, they're going to be ranked at the end of the season.
You think? Well, I would think so. I mean, a lot of it depends on how they do in those last 4 games. I think those last 4 games are brutal without a bye week. I pointed it to, was it Michigan, then Minnesota, Wisconsin, then Iowa? I think that's the order without a bye week.
Minnesota. You got Illinois on October 29th, then November 5th, Minnesota at Michigan, November 12th.
Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Iowa.
Wisconsin on the 19th, and then at Iowa on Black Friday.
That's brutal. I think that's an absolute brutal close without a bye week for Nebraska football.
Let me ask you this. On the AP top 25, let's just focus on the top 10. First of all, there's only 4 Big Ten teams ranked. Is that a big deal to you?
Michigan State 15th. They got Wisconsin 18th. Obviously, Ohio State 2nd, Michigan 8th. Then Michigan State 15th with that great year, 11-2 with Mel Tucker doing what Nebraska's doing right now. I think they brought in like 20 transfers. Nebraska's bringing in 16. So we'll see if that's the recipe that Nebraska can follow from Michigan State. I'm a little surprised that there's no Penn. I know Penn State struggled the last couple of years, but to see Penn State outside the top 25 with Franklin at the helm, the way he recruits is a little surprising to me. But they've had a couple of disappointing years. And then you've got Iowa and Minnesota not ranked either. I think you could make an argument for either of those teams that they could be top 25.
The one team that is not even getting votes that I think is I'm one of my predictions later on is going to win the Big Ten West, and that's Purdue.
Right.
I think Purdue should be ranked. Now, do you have your own top 10? I did just because.
Well, give it to me. I didn't rank them because I don't know about anybody. I have no idea about Nebraska. I think that the transfers are indeed going to make a big difference, but I don't know. I think I'll know after the first quarter against Northwestern a lot of information. Right now, I think everybody is guessing about everybody.
I did minutes upon minutes of study on every college football team. not minutes per, but minutes for all of them. Yeah, minutes of study. And I have what I think is going to be the top 10 at the end of the year.
Do you want to give it to me now?
I'm going to.
All right.
Just because we're talking about the AP top 25. And it was Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Utah, Michigan, Oklahoma, Baylor.
Right.
I have Ohio State and Bama flipped. And I have Georgia 3, Utah 4, Michigan 5, Baylor 6, North Carolina State 7, A&M 8th, Oregon 9th, Oklahoma State 10th. That's my top 10. And in the college football playoff, I think Bama knocks off Utah and Ohio State beats Georgia.
Mike's been drinking today. I think I don't know. I mean, I believe Bama will be in the college football playoff because they always are. I just go by history.
Yep.
I'll believe it, I guess, till I see it. I mean, I believe that Oregon could still get there from the Pac-12, and I don't see a lot of other teams that can. USC, Oregon, UCLA, no. But Utah would be one of those teams that actually they play the brand of football that I wish Nebraska would get back to playing. It reminds you of old school physical football. I like Utah a lot, and I like the way they're coached, but it's just hard for me to see them in the college football playoff. I do want to shift back to the discussion before we get to break about the TV deal.
Yep.
Because we did shift away from that a little bit. It's amazing money. I mean, it is not everybody that you hand money makes good decisions with that money. And Nebraska, quite frankly, has always had money, even before they joined the Big Ten. But this is Big Ten, $100 million a year. You can afford to make mistakes. And if you make mistakes and you're bringing in $150 or 100, with other revenues. I mean, with this, it's not just that's going to be their total source of revenue. You're probably talking about 130 to 40, $50 million a year bringing in if the university manages what they have. There are absolutely no excuses. If Scott Frost doesn't do it this year, maybe even if he's 6-6, hey, who cares? We got Big Ten TV money. You're gone. 6-6 ain't good enough. Maybe 7-5 isn't. Some believe it isn't. I talked to Coach George Darlington. I don't think he would mind me saying this. I don't think 6-6 is good enough. I mean, we fired coaches for going 9-3. Two of them, Bo Pelini and Frank Solich. So now it's tough for me to believe that 6-6 is good enough. Although when you're 15-29, maybe 6-6 is good enough.
I don't think it is. So let me ask you this: with the money and with expected, who knows when, but within, I would say 3 years, you're going to have an announcement that the SEC and the Big Ten are both going to go to 20 teams. Tom Chattel this morning wrote an article, and it's very interesting. If you haven't had a chance to read it in the World Herald, please do. But he kind of talks about going back in time to the 60s and a press box, and the funny thing that strings them all together is hot dogs. But the way college football was back then, the way it was in the 90s, the way it is kind of today, and then he jumps ahead to like 2035. And the one thing that he said that I thought was really interesting is the talk now in the press box in 2035 is everybody's kind of going, oh my gosh, is this really going to happen? The super conferences, SEC and Big Ten, 20 teams each, are going to go more regional, and they're going to shrink themselves down to 8-team conferences. And you may have 16 teams that continue to play under the Big Ten umbrella, but they're going to be split into totally separate conferences for scheduling purposes and travel, et cetera. SEC does the same thing. You've got 4 teams that are left out that kind of form their own little conference, but they're all part of the big party of those 40. And that was what he was talking about. And my brain was like a little
sounds like the NFL.
Yeah. I'm like, this is literally starting to sound like possibly the NFL. By the way, Kevin Warren, with an NFL background, has positioned the Big Ten to move forward.
Yeah,
we
all
landscape.
We all beat him up pretty good during COVID, but now
well-deserved.
And well-deserved at times. But right now he's looking pretty good.
Yeah,
he's looking pretty good. And we'll see what the SEC does. Maybe it was good for them to see what the Big Ten could get, $7 to $8 million, and now they're going to ask for 10 when they sign their next TV deal. But it looks for now like you got 2 conferences. You just said it. You got the SEC and you got the Big Ten, and they're collecting money. I mean, they could literally have bonfires full of money and be fine. Where other conferences, you're wondering, I mean, how much longer it's not like they're getting crumbs, but compared to $100 million a year, the Big 12 and the Pac-12 are getting crumbs.
Yeah.
And the ACC could probably be lumped into that as well. Now you're going to have, I still think there are schools out there that are left to be cherry picked. I don't think the TV signing is necessarily over.
No.
I think you got Clemson out there. That's a big one. You got Notre Dame out there.
I think Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and Florida wind up, or not Clemson, Florida State, Miami, and maybe a Pittsburgh, but maybe a North Carolina wind up in the SEC. And then I think it's Washington, Cal, or no, what would it be? Washington, Stanford, and Oregon, I believe, are the 3, and Notre Dame come to the Big Ten. That's going to be your 20 and 20.
Those would be great names and a lot of money for the Big Ten. It was interesting what Trev Alberts talked about after that contract was signed. He says, I think about Jim Nantz at the Masters talking about the Big Ten games in the fall. We're getting ready to air an NFL game on CBS, and they're promoting Nebraska versus Oklahoma or Nebraska versus Wisconsin again. During a primetime NFL slot. I think that could really help the Big Ten. I think there will be some of us that do miss ABC and ESPN because when I think of Nebraska football, I think of Keith Jackson and college football and those hosses racing out of the tunnel. And that was always on ABC. And, it was not quite the same when Nebraska would play on CBS. Maybe for me, it was just because Brent Musburger was college football when he was doing games on CBS. It was fine, but it was for me. It was Keith Jackson on ABC, and that was college football. That's what I grew up knowing.
This contract will not help Big Ten basketball. Big Ten basketball is the best basketball conference in the country. I don't think there's much question.
Yeah.
And the exposure on ESPN and the way they did things, I thought was fantastic.
Right.
And they're not going to get that with this TV deal.
Yeah, what I think about is, hey, the game's on ESPN. Oh, it's on ESPN News for the next 15 minutes. So you can click over there because they have their family of networks. How is CBS going to pull off that same thing, or NBC?
You're going to have to go stream.
You're going to have to go stream somewhere, which is fine, I guess. I mean, we'll live with that. But ESPN kind of had it down to a science when it came to basketball for me. And they're 2-hour games. So it was easy to watch a game and then be over with it. With Nebraska football, it's a full day celebration. Even if you watch it at home, you got to get up early and plan what you're going to have. And 4 hours later it ends. And then you got to, if they win, you got to be excited about it. If they lose, you got to be angry about it. So that's basically it. It's a full day thing for football. Basketball is just easier to consume, I think, on the ESPN networks.
Completely agree.
I think that's where we'll really miss it.
6 days from now, at this exact moment, Nebraska fans, you are going to be thrilled with what you saw. You're going to be pissed at what you saw. The team that you're going to be mad at or thrilled with named their captains yesterday. We're going to talk about that and potential black shirts when we come back. It is the Husker Rewind right here on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
We're still as busy as we've ever been. Across the country, you may see a small slowdown, but in Lincoln, Nebraska, we're not slowing down.
Bob Benish is the founder and president of Aspen Builders, online at aspenbuildersinc.com.
Our Southwest Lincoln development is just going great as we keep growing in Southwest Lincoln. Down the road, we'll have a new school, so that's exciting. We also have a new development out in East Lincoln over by Hillcrest Country Club. Just a real neat subdivision because it features trees, great views. If you're concerned about interest rates, many lenders in town offer extended lock periods. So it's worth contacting a lender and asking them about an extended lock. That's a big deal.
Make your dream home a reality and call Aspen Builders at 423-6811. Online at aspenbuildersinc.com. Your home is waiting at Aspen Builders.
Happy Hour with Nick Sainert and Enrique Alvarez Clary.
Why do people hate alternate uniforms? What is the problem with the university or players wanting to have some type of fun? People are like, oh, well, Penn State and Michigan and Alabama, they don't change uniforms. They just go out there and they play football games. That's cool. You can do alternate uniforms and still be a blue blood. It's something that could attract recruits. And yes, I understand.
Yeah, as sad as that is.
Winning attracts recruits. That's all you need to do is win and play football. Shut up.
Weekdays from 1 to 2 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Part-time job, full-time hustle, all-time Shiro to all of us. You nurture, we listen. You teach, we thrive. You lift our spirits, but we've got to lay down the truth. It's time for you, our Shiro, to stretch for the stars. Start saving more for retirement now so you can feel prepared and live your life to the fullest. Get free tips to help boost your retirement savings now at aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
A message brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back. Sunday Rewind. Tom Stevens, Mike Melby, former voice of the Lincoln Stars. He was. I wasn't. I would just be on the ticket, though. This very radio station. And we're back 2 hours every Sunday called The Rewind. We'll react to whatever happened on Saturday, the previous week. Very excited. 6 days until kickoff for Nebraska football in Ireland, in Dublin. And the captains have been announced. Nebraska's 4-team captains were announced yesterday, with 3 of them on the defensive side. You had edge rushers Garrett Nelson and Caleb Tanner. And then you had Nick Henrich and Travis Vokalek. Henrich at linebacker, Travis Vokalek at tight end. So you just have one guy from the offense with a voice right now. Does that concern you?
Yeah. It does. Before we went on the air, I said there's one name that I genuinely had I bought a chisel and a hammer and I carved it in stone that he was going to be a captain, and he's not. And I'm a little shocked. Casey Thompson's not a captain.
Yeah, but do you name a guy that hasn't been here? Like
Darian Daniels.
If a guy just gets here, Darian Daniels was a good one, but Nebraska was really thin at defensive line, and you needed a voice, and they got that guy who was a starter at Oklahoma State.
Yeah,
Darian Daniels, and he came in and he really had a great offseason. I thought O'Shawn Mathis, do you name him a captain in a very short time? But he's been here he didn't go through spring ball even.
No.
Some of these guys that arrived haven't even gone through spring ball. Casey did, but then he had the thumb injury. And so you were wondering what you were going to get from Casey Thompson, because I think he was probably throwing at 70% of what his arm zip is available. And so for him not to be named a captain, maybe it's a concern for other Husker fans. 464-5685 on the Lincoln Hotline, Sutter Heyman text line. What do you think? Is it a concern that a guy that has been here since spring and apparently does have a voice, I think is respected in the locker room, but he wasn't named captain?
Yeah, like I said, I thought he would be a shoo-in as a captain. And the fact that he's not, I don't think is overly concerning. It just seems a little odd. Flip side, though, from the standpoint of we had a captain who was literally the face of the program, who was the quarterback for the last 4 years. And everything we've heard out of the locker room, and this is from the locker room, from the players, not from necessarily the coaches, and actually a little bit the coaches. Now that I think about some comments that were made, the leadership we have this year is better than any time that we've been here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Scott Frost actually said that. And I think that speaks volumes directly to the leadership of Adrian Martinez.
Don't forget a guy, probably the greatest player. No, was the greatest player in Nebraska football history, was never a captain. And not always well loved within the team.
I was going to say he was not. Yeah, he was kind of despised. But and we're talking about Tommy Frazier.
Well, they respected him though, and you'd rather have the respect of your teammates than the love in some cases, I think.
Well,
if you have love but not respect, that I don't trust that at all.
No. And the thing with Frazier was just simply very confident from the second he stepped on campus. And I'd heard stories, I mean, whether they're true or not, there's probably some shred of truth to it, but like there would be situations during practice where the offensive lineman would literally tap the defenders, and all 5 guys coming at Tommy Frazier would not get touched, and he would make a play. And after that happened a couple times, because he kind of rubbed some guys the wrong way, they all went, okay, you know what? I don't need to like you, but I want to win.
I think being named a captain is part popularity contest. The players do it. And I'm sure the coaches have influence. They'll say, by the way, this guy's on the list, regardless of what your list is. He's going to be on the list. No surprise, Garrett Nelson is a captain. He's been a captain really for a couple of years. He's only a junior, by the way. Caleb Tanner surprises me a little bit that he's been named a captain, in that production-wise, he was 10th in tackles on last year's tackle charts. So that not that he's not a good enough player to be a captain. He's certainly that. And I guess it's encouraging to me in that he's obviously taken his leadership way up in the last year, because I think he was a quieter guy.
He was a much quieter guy, and he talked about that in an article that was in one of the publications. It may have been on 3. By the way, on 3's Steve Sipple will join us next hour. It talked about he was forced by the coaching staff to be a leader when the program came in and ran them through their exercises this summer. They went to him and said, Caleb, you are in charge of this group of people. We need you to be a leader. And it wasn't something, I think, where it was a message to the team, hey, Caleb's a guy you got to vote for captain when fall comes. This was an opportunity for Caleb Tanner to broaden his game, to broaden his place in the locker room. He always did what was best and what he was supposed to do. He focused on himself, and he talks about it in this article about, I was solely worried about my assignment, but he didn't necessarily capture the big picture of everybody's assignment and what happens if this goes sideways or that. He's focused on what he needs to do. That forced him to be a leader. he carried it over, learned the lesson, and I think that's why he's a captain, is because he has made an about face and is now a guy that is in people's face when he needs to be.
Yep, he's Mike Melby, former voice of the Lincoln Stars. I'm Tom Stevens. We together do Husker Rewind every Sunday, now 2 hours from 5 until 7. I want to get back to that Frazier discussion, never being named a captain, and yet he was one of the best leaders in Nebraska football history, the best player in Nebraska football history, and related to what Nebraska is going through now with Casey Thompson. You mentioned a bit of surprise that he has not been named a captain. Mark Whipple once said, even I think over the spring, you can go back and look it up. He said, I kind of want my quarterback to be a jerk. I don't want him to be a nice guy. Kenny Pickett was that way. Ben Roethlisberger was that way. I want him to be in command and not always liked. He was around Peyton Manning. Mark Whipple was. He's been around some of the best quarterbacks ever. And that stuck out to me. You want your quarterback to kind of be a jerk. And I know what he means in relation to Tommy, because he was not the most loved by any means, but he was the most respected by far. And maybe Casey doesn't need to be the most loved to the point where he gets, just arrives here. He's named captain versus guys that have been here forever. And Vokalek, Caleb Tanner, and Garrett Nelson have all been here for a long time. So you understand that versus a guy who just arrived in town. For me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing with the you want your QB to be kind of a jerk and have a little bit of that edge to him.
Right.
Did our quarterback the last 4 years have an edge to him? No. Everybody loved him.
Right.
And, at the end of the day, when the game was on the line and we needed a play made, we needed the jerk to make a play.
Yeah.
And instead, the nice guy took the blame for not making the play. And 15 and 29 later, it's just, 44 games in. That's what the Adrian Martinez era was at Nebraska football. It was a nice guy running the ship.
Yeah, well, you mentioned it, and I think it's true as well. You need more voices on the offensive side of the ball. It's been a discussion point this spring. One of their worst practices where they were dominated by the secondary. Whipple said, we need more voices. And Casey said the same thing. We need more voices. He said, we have me, and then we have Travis, and then you don't have anybody else. I wonder if Corcoran could be that guy.
Well, and we talked about this
on the offensive line. You need an offensive lineman to step up.
I really, truly think that we do. And you and I talked about this with Strick and Nate Friday afternoon. And I thought it was an interesting point of who is that person going to be? And you had brought up Turner Corcoran, and I threw out Trey Palmer just because he seems to have
He's a shy guy, though. I met him this summer.
Okay.
He was at Tanner's. Really nice kid. But this is, he had just arrived in Lincoln. So you understand that this was actually in the spring. It was even before the summer started. And DP set up a thing for the offensive linemen. And I think Jacques Yant was there and Trey Palmer was there. The whole offensive line was there with, Brant Banks and Norton and Wheatley. But he's at least at that point, that was in the spring. He's not a big talker. I think he does the talking with his game, and there are times where he will say, hey, just throw me the damn ball. I think there is that.
And maybe I'm reading more into that comment from the spring where he basically said, well, not basically, he did say, throw me the damn ball.
Yeah. And you like that arrogance.
Yes.
Because I think he's got that. I think Marcus Washington has that. I think you're going to get some leadership, some guys that will never be named captain that rise. I think O'Shawn Mathis is very quickly going to be a voice that you're going to love on this football team. But he doesn't want to be that guy that's yelling and screaming yet because he feels like he hasn't earned it, even though he's walking on campus as the best defensive player that Nebraska has. I don't think he's showing that arrogance, and he wants the leadership to come more naturally rather than saying, hey, I'm a captain.
Everything we've heard about O'Shawn Mathis from the time he set foot on campus, it just screams of exactly who you want on your football team.
Yeah.
He doesn't care if he is the best defender we have. He knows he's got to earn the respect. He knows he's got to be quiet, listen, understand the culture, figure out where he fits. And that's all his teammates have talked about that he does. He simply waits until it's his turn. He didn't come in and say, I'm making it my turn because I'm better than you. He came in and said, how do we do this? What do we talk about here? And I'm sure he's sharing stories from, his time at TCU. But at the same time, he has just genuinely fit right in wherever he needed to.
Well, hopefully you don't need to be named captain to have a voice. That's for sure. I think Stephen Wynn is a guy that could be that type of guy in a very short amount of time. Devin Drew has put himself in for playing time. He's been around college football a lot. That's what you're doing when you add 16 transfers.
Yeah.
Darius Moore is a guy that Scott Frost pointed out just this week. And he just got on campus, the transfer from UCF originally, then went to Florida State, and now is bounced for his final year to Nebraska. He says, I think he'll definitely contribute probably early. I think maybe he's talking about special teams, but I mean, these bodies, wherever the leadership shows up on the field, I don't necessarily need it to be a starter all the time.
Well, but that's the thing, though. I want to talk about real quick. Got to get his name right. Is it Brandon Moore or Darius Moore?
Is it Brandon? It might be Brandon Moore. I'm sorry. If it is, I apologize.
Well, but the one thing that he's got a leg up, he may have only been here not a very long amount of time.
It is Darius Moore. Sorry about that.
But the thing is, he knows this defense. He played in this defense at UCF under Chenander. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, granted, there's going to be some new wrinkles, et cetera, but he has a leg up on anybody that would have just come in.
Yep. I'm excited about the potential for depth on this team. We'll talk about that because it's something that Eric Chenander pointed out earlier this week. And we mentioned it, I think, on the block party when the block party was moved to 5 o'clock to the drive. Long thing. But we were on Restrict and Nate the other day, and we broached this subject. But I think it's worth bringing up again at the top of the hour, the depth discussion. And where is Nebraska and how much depth do they have and how does it relate to recent years for Nebraska football, because it's been a big problem in the past. And then Stephen M. Sipple.
Exactly. Looking forward to that.
He is with On3 now. He had an article to write. So he said, oh, wait a minute. I can't go on at my original time. Can I go on at 6:20? Because you can go on whenever you want to. You're Stephen M. Sipple, for crying out loud. We're not going to tell you when to go on the air. So we get him before he leaves for Ireland, I believe tomorrow, like most of the beat guys are. I do want to mention something that we're doing, a little project that we're doing, Mike Melby, myself, Dave Sanderson. It's called Nebraska Gems, where we do stories with cool Nebraskans, and we've had some really good ones. James Ballard of James Arthur Vineyards was really good interview, very smart guy, and we've spent some time at James Arthur Vineyards. Just had John Baylor, of course, the voice of Husker volleyball. You had Rick Swigger. We had Clayton Anderson, the astronaut. But we have some lesser-known stories as well. Yeah, that are really cool that we'd like to share with you. And just go to NebraskaGems.com.
That's the thing to do. The last one was it's the story of a small town, Alma, Nebraska, small town grocery store. And the family's owned it since 1966. And just kind of the theory of how they were the one left standing out of the three grocery store. I mean, it's a super interesting story. We've got more of those coming from small town Nebraska. And I know some of the other names. I know there's a PA voice that everybody will know that's ever been to the Icebox that we're going to sit down with sometime soon. And another one that I'm pretty confident people are going to enjoy is the former director of Nebraska Game and Parks, Rex Amack.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Rex was born to tell stories. Yeah. And he told me that he's going to cut himself off at 3 hours. So I said, not a problem.
Well, that's what we want, is we want great stories from great Nebraskans, NebraskaGems.com. And you can go there wherever you get your podcasts and check it out. They're everywhere. And we're very proud that we're actually shooting up the charts. We're getting rather famous for us in the podcast world, which isn't always very famous. I mean, they can be obscure, but we're doing very well with the downloads, and it's because of you guys. Thanks for checking it out, NebraskaGems.com.
All righty, let's talk black shirts maybe. They're not handed out yet, but we'll touch on that when we come back.
Okay, let's do that.
And we can do that. I don't know what else we'll do for the remainder of the hour, but we'll figure
out something. It's a 2-hour show. We better get something, for crying out loud.
There's a game in 6 days. I think we got something to talk about.
That might help. More with Mike Melby and Tom Stevens together. It is Husker Rewind. Back with more after this.
At Venue Catering and Events, we offer two of the most historic ballrooms in Lincoln. The Jasmine Room, located in the historic Grand Manse in the heart of downtown, featuring a beautiful built-in antique bar, spacious patio, and soaring skylit ceilings. The Scottish Rite Ballroom, located just 2 blocks from the state's capital. boasts intricate hand-carved columns, rich dark wood floors, and lavish chandeliers. The perfect venues to host your wedding, corporate event, or much more. For availability and more information, call us at 402-603-6483.
Hi, Sean Callahan here of HuskerOnline.com, inviting you to join us here on 93.7 The Ticket every Saturday morning now in our new time. We're on from 8 to 9 with the weekly Husker Online radio show. We'll give you the latest in recruiting. We'll talk about what's going on with both football, basketball, and we'll probably share a few stories from the inside. It's every Saturday morning right here on 93.7 The Ticket. It's the Husker Online radio show from 8 to 9 a.m.
Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out. But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, that frog will boil. As a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans, it's a story that rings true. We learn to endure the heat in silence. We apply what we learn to life, the bills, the job, the family, things we're expected to handle with ease. When life heats up around us, we just try to stay afloat. We let the water boil. Reaching out isn't easy, but you've never been interested in easy. You join because you are not afraid of hard work. You are not a frog. If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait until the water boils. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach. Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
More of the Sunday Rewind is coming your way next.
60% of the time, it works every time.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Little TP for you there. It is Husker Rewinds. Is it Sunday Rewind or Husker Rewind? What do you call
I
it?
like Husker Rewind, but it's Sunday Rewind.
We can call it whatever we want to. It's our show. Husker Rewind is what we'll go with. Mike Melby, Tom Stevens. Number one, Nebraska had their red-white game yesterday. John Cook called it great volleyball yesterday. About 8,000 people showed up for a scrimmage at the Devaney Center. Only Nebraska fans do that. It's crazy. All-American Maddie Kubek, who had a nice year last year, led the way with 13 kills. You had Caitlin Horde, who's also an All-American, the transfer from Penn State, with 9 blocks. Lindsey Krause had 12 kills and hit 407. This looks like it's going to be a very good volleyball team. I guess what you're a little concerned about is, who's replacing Kayla Caffey at the middle. You've got Horde, who's an All-American, and they've got really talented freshmen coming in. What's your prediction? Who ends up winning that job? Is it? I
think it's going to be Becca Alec.
Yeah, I think so too. And she went out there first last night, I think.
And the reason I say that is I truly believe that, but also I'm biased because I'm a Waverly grad. She's from Waverly. So.
By the way, Nebraska is number one in the country in volleyball. I think there's 7 Big Ten teams ranked
in the top 20.
In the top
Not
20.
25. I think 20th is Penn State, actually.
Creighton's in the top 20.
18th.
They're 18th, I believe. So cool. It's cool for Nebraska that they start to see. I think that was a bit of a surprise for John Cook. I don't think he expected to be ranked number one. And it was close with Texas.
Yeah.
Texas had a great recruiting class, and obviously they get Kayla Caffey even after they were full, basically.
And Kayla Akani, too.
Yeah.
So here's my question with volleyball. Does the season, if there's any poetic justice, the Final Four is in Omaha at the CHI Health Center, formerly Quest Center, formerly whatever center. Does Nebraska make it? I think they do. And if there's any poetic justice, the Texas Longhorns are on the opposite side of the bracket in the Final Four, and it's Nebraska-Texas for the national title.
That's going to be a little crusty. I mean, there's
it.
always a lot of hate for Texas, but now you've got 2 Huskers on that team.
That's the whole. But that would be a perfect scenario to me.
Yeah.
For college volleyball to end like that, and there's a little
so good.
There's a little rub. Yeah, there's a little rub with Kayla Caffey and the way things transpired leading up to her transferring to Texas.
I don't blame Kayla Caffey.
And then having Jordan Larson be on Texas, the staff at Texas as well.
Oh, I know. You're starting the theater. You're already starting to light a fire there. I like it. The black shirts, when are they going to be awarded? Do you know?
They were going to be awarded yesterday, but one of the equipment guys said, sorry, coach, I have a million things to pack. That is one of them because we're going to Ireland tomorrow. Right. So they wound up in a big chest, and they're being shipped to Ireland. The players will be awarded the black shirts first practice in Dublin. And the question, though, is, now I had read somewhere, you had not read it, and I may be incorrect, but I believe I read somewhere that they do not plan on giving a black shirt to anyone who has not played in a game at Nebraska.
That's fair. That's fair for me.
It is for me,
and maybe
too.
they had the same rules secretly as it regards to Casey Thompson. We don't want anybody being named a captain who hasn't been here and had a voice. I don't know. Maybe that was secretly spread around the team. But maybe that's the same explanation there as the black shirt explanation. Do you like that rule? If you haven't played a snap at Nebraska, that you don't get a black shirt?
I'm fine with it. I mean, let's face it. It is something that is earned on game days. And if guys have, I know they've awarded them prior because there had to have been a freshman that did not play. I would assume that Ralph Brown probably and Mike Brown, because I believe they both started as freshmen, they probably were awarded black shirts prior to their first game. But who would you name your black shirts?
Well, I think if I gave them out right now, then I would give out also my starting lineup on defense, basically. And we're going to do that next hour. Aren't we?
Good point. Good point.
So we probably can't. Here's what I would say about the black shirt discussion is I hope they keep it to 12 or maybe 13 because you have to have a nickel, right? So that adds, an extra. And then so Isaac Gifford gets a black shirt or maybe, depending on the defensive formation, you add wrinkles. And so some guy starts in certain position groups at some, so it's like you can't just give out. There's not 11 starters on offense. There's 12 or 13. There's not 11 starters on defense. There's 12 or 13, right?
Depending on the position group.
Yeah, and what you want to do offensively. So Ramir Johnson may not be your starter at running back, but he's a starter at in the slot.
Wide back.
He's a wide back. So it's a little. I don't want to give out my black shirts yet. But
enough.
How about when we do this? When we have the discussion about the defense. We could also, he's a black shirt. We could just say that. We could tag it with that guy is definitely a black shirt. I think that it's exciting because we're going to have the depth discussion in about 10 minutes. You look at this and you think, man, there could be a different guy every game starting. It feels like the talent is really, really even across the board. And it's the guy who practices the best, the guy who shows up at practice and doesn't make the mental mistakes. Maybe will be the guy that walks out there. Maybe not the most talented guy every time. The guy that, if I miss the days at Nebraska where you had a bad practice and you lost your gig. It's been this way for a long time. Obviously, Sue was never going to lose his gig, but there were guys that could, on that 2009 defense, it was one of the better defenses in college football that year with Sue. If you didn't show up, Bo wasn't always going to play you. And it's been a while since that conversation has happened.
Now, the one question I have for you, though, with the 12 or 13, like you're talking about black shirts, and when we were talking about depth on Friday, and Eric Chenander has mentioned it, and he's mentioned a couple of different position groups. So let me ask you this. Let's go to the nickel, because it is kind of the 12th defender that you're going to bring in passing situations. It sounds like Isaac Gifford is probably going to start next Saturday.
He lives in the film room. I think he understands that position group better than the other guys do.
I agree, but according to Eric Chenander, Chris Kolarevic and Javin Wright literally have better days in practice, and they're going to start based on the way they practiced. That's happened numerous times this fall camp. So from the black shirt discussion, do all three of those guys, if we're game 5 and the starter in game 5 is starting his second game, somebody else has started 1 and the other one started 2, do you give all three of them black shirts? Are you okay with that?
I don't like it to go really past 13. But I understand that discussion that, maybe you just leave that position. If you have 3 number ones, you don't really have a number one. If you have 2 number one quarterbacks, you have no number one quarterback. maybe you just leave it until you have a definitive guy that goes to win the job. I don't like that whole thing where some cases, even under Bo Pelini, where you had 15 guys, and with Mike Riley, 15 guys that had black shirts, and then they had to give them back at some point during the season.
Well,
with bad performances.
They sucked so bad. I believe it was actually Ben Stilley, wasn't it? His freshman or sophomore year that just said, I did not play.
Right. So here you go.
To be worthy of wearing this.
Yeah. And then there were other guys that should have turned in their black shirts that, no, I'm too late.
Lamar Jackson comes to mind.
Lamar was talented, but
he was talented, but he had horrible games that were just awful. He'd get burned for 4 touchdowns and have, the receiver he was covering caught 300 yards worth of passes. And after the game, Ben Stilley's like, you can have my black shirt back. And Lamar Jackson is going, you can't have mine.
Yeah.
But we didn't have anybody else that could compete with Lamar Jackson. He was just simply that talented athletically. He finally figured it out. He became a draft pick. He played for the Jets. I don't believe he is on a roster right now, but
no. But you can't give 3 guys black shirts at one position. You can't give Javin Wright, Isaac Gifford, and Kolarvik all black shirts, can you? That seems a little weird.
I don't think you can either.
No.
But if you that's the whole thing though. Like if you wind up giving Chris Kolarvik a black shirt and then he has a couple of bad weeks of practice, then do you take it away again? I mean, that's where
I think you're going to see some guys that currently are way down the depth chart run up it. Because they've been here a very short time and in some cases came from big name programs and just were really talented guys that haven't had a chance to practice at Nebraska. And once they get their feet wet and learn the terminology, it's, Alabama runs a lot of the same things that Nebraska does, or TCU runs a lot of the same things that Nebraska does, but the terminology is different. So you're picking up a brand new language. I think a guy like Kane Williams could make a move. I think a guy like I don't know if Stephen Wynn is a starter or not, but I think he's obviously going to make a move. Devin Drew. I don't know if he's a starter or not, but he's going to make a move.
The name slips my mind right now. Who was the running back for Michigan State last year?
Yeah.
He was third team at Wake Forest.
Yep. Transfer.
And he transfers in. But so to your point, who is going to be that guy? Or are there several of those guys? I mean, Anthony Grant could be on the same position at running back. He could come in and rush for 1,500 yards and be the bell cow of
Kenneth
that
Walker,
running back
by the
room.
way. Yeah, Kenneth Walker.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
But that's where it was one where I'm going, you know what? Guys get buried on depth charts at other schools, etc. And all of a sudden you're like, hey, I think I got a shot here.
I do want to have the depth chart discussion on the show. Yeah, it's definitely not easy for me to say, but this show is going to go another hour, so I got to say something for an entire hour along with Mike Melby. This is Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind. We do it every Sunday from 5 until 7. Stephen M. Sipple, within the next 20 minutes or so, he'll be on with us, but the depth chart discussion is next on Husker Rewind.
Hey, buying a used vehicle sucks, and the biggest problem is who can you trust? Hey, this is Carl from Price Right Auto out here at West O Street in Lincoln. Here's what customers have told us they want from us. They want transparent pricing with no games. We have all our pricing on our website, plus a Carfax report. We don't want to buy a lemon. We include a 3-month warranty on all of our vehicles. We don't want to play games. Just make it simple. We saw that with non-commissioned salespeople. Can you trust us? Just check out our Google reviews. Again, this is Carl from Price Right Auto on West O. Check us out at pricerightauto.com.
Are you looking for an opportunity to make a difference? Join AmeriCorps. Serving as an AmeriCorps member, you'll make meaningful impacts and connections to help build your career. Whether your passions are saving the environment, fighting food insecurity, or traveling, there's an AmeriCorps program that's right for everyone. Plus, you'll earn a living stipend and an education award for your service. Find out the program that fits your goals at serve.nebraska.gov/service. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Hey, wouldn't it be great if life came with a remote control? You know, you could hit pause when you needed to, or hit rewind, like that time you knocked down that wasp's nest. Uh-oh. Or that time you forgot to roll up your windows in the car wash.
Fantastic.
Yeah, a remote control would have come in handy then. Well, life doesn't always give you time to change the outcome. but prediabetes does. With early diagnosis and a few healthy changes like managing your weight, getting active, stopping smoking, and eating healthier, you can stop prediabetes before it leads to type 2 diabetes. It's easy to learn your risk. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Life doesn't come with a remote control. Yikes! So you're on your own with the wasps. You have the power to take control of prediabetes. Visit doihaveprediabetes.org today. That's doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to choose
between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind.
Take it back now, y'all.
Thing down, flip it and reverse it. If I could turn back time.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens here, Mike Melby there. 2 hours show from 5 until 7, the entire college football season. We might go a little later if the Broncos have a late game around 3 o'clock, but we'll be here for you. The entire football and basketball season, a full 2 hours, and we're excited about that. I do want to have the discussion we promised you about depth. It's interesting what Eric Shenander said today, or actually earlier this week, I should say, and you mentioned it. We just had the discussion about the nickelback position and how many black shirts would you give out among those guys. Isaac Gifford, Chris Kolarvik, and Javin Wright, who's probably the most talented of the three, but he's been injured throughout his career.
Javin Wright made a play that they had on one of the Husker social media. That was, you're just like,
well, he's a physical freak. He's 6'4", 210, something along those lines. I mean, he's long.
Jumping, twisting interception. I was just like, wow.
Yeah, so he would probably be the guy that you would pick as far as athleticism, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Isaac is the guy that's the film room junkie that seems to know the position and talks to his brother all the time. He's now in the NFL playing for your Cowboys. But this was the quote from Shenander about those three. He says, I've got to see who's going to have the best practice, and it might be that way all year. I feel like we've got three competent guys, and it might be whoever practices the best that week gets to go out there the first snap. It sounds like a really good problem to have, because he said this about more than one position. He's talked about, Garrett Nelson. He's O'Shawn Mathis and Caleb Tanner. And who do you start? I mean, you got to pick two out of the three in many cases. But I think they're going to try to find a way to get them all on the field.
Those three specifically, but those three have talked about Jamari Butler and Nash Hutmacher as well.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, Blaise Gunnerson as well.
Yeah.
Hutmacher's on the interior, but they've talked about Gunnerson and Butler, and they're like, I'll tell you what, when we need to take a breath on the sideline, and maybe two of us do, we got no qualms with the guys that are behind us.
Yeah, it's been a good problem to have all that experience. Garrett Nelson's a junior, but he's really a senior in experience. O'Shawn Mathis has 2 years left. Caleb Tanner is going on, I believe, his 5th year. He's the true senior of the group.
This is his COVID year.
But you have a lot of guys with a lot of experience, and I think it helps in teaching some of the younger dudes. Like, they're there. They know exactly what to do. They've done it, even if it's in another school. You're O'Shawn Mathis. You've been at TCU. Well, Patterson was your head coach, and the guy knows a lot about defense. So he picked up some things with other coaches, not just Nebraska coaches. But they're teaching guys like Blaise Gunnerson or Jamari Butler, as you mentioned. And you're hearing from Chin, hey, those guys, don't be surprised to see Blaze Gunnerson or Jamari Butler in a game and when it matters. I need to give more snaps. I know Barrett Root has talked about the same thing, that you need to play more than just the starters. You need to have, a little off, from your legs occasionally. So I think that's going to be a big thing for Nebraska football, that they get guys in the game more often, and depth will provide that this year. But it made me think, when's the last time Nebraska had where you thought depth on the defensive side of the ball, where you could play 15 to 18 guys and you felt like just as good about the guy coming in as the guy who left the game?
It's been a while. I mean, you had Sue and Crick, but behind them, I don't remember who was backing them up because they didn't make.
They never got injured.
Yeah, it's gonna say.
Yeah, Sue never left the field.
No,
that I remember.
No, I'll be honest. I think you realistically almost need to go back to the early 2000s before you can say, you know what, Nebraska had great depth,
right?
Defensive line, wherever it is, but I think it may be 20 years ago.
When you can say to a player, and this is what Eric Shenander is saying, it's going to be the guy who practices the best. When you can say that and let the players decide who starts, because they know who had the best practices. They're not stupid. Some will say, man, I outplayed that dude and he's got the starting gig. The rest of the guys are going to say, no, you really didn't.
Yeah,
you really didn't. That guy's starting because he doesn't blow assignments a lot. Maybe he doesn't make quite as many players as you, but you make the mistakes. So that's right. You're not good, healthy competition. One guy starting 1 week, other guy starting the next week. I think that's fantastic. If that's what comes out of this, if everybody elevates their game, somebody's going to really rise to the top at some point. And you're going to find the Blaze Gunnersons of the world, the Jamari Butlers of the world. Who knows? They might turn out to be better than all of them.
Exactly. So speaking of rising to the top, do you want to go in and talk a little bit about who maybe your top 22?
Okay. Should we start, since we just did talk about defense and what Eric Shenander thinks of his defense? These are my starters on defense.
Okay.
Tommy Hill, Quentin Newsome at cornerback. Then you got Miles Farmer, and maybe a bit of a surprise for some, Marcus Buford, the other safety. So those are your four safeties. At nickel, I've got Isaac Gifford winning that job for now, but I think it could, as Shenander said, it could be one of those things that is a different guy throughout the season. Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich, another captain, is your other inside linebacker. Garrett Nelson is, I don't know, did they play all three of them, or they play two out of the three? Caleb Tanner, O'Shawn Mathis, those guys are all interchangeable. And then you've got Ty Robinson and Stephen Wynn, starting at defensive tackle. I don't know. I think Feist could be a guy, or Drew could be a guy that pushes either one of those guys, but you don't have to rely on younger dudes. Those guys are all experienced on the defensive line.
Completely agree. I got on the defensive line, Ty Robinson, and I said Stephen Wynn. Colton Feist, and I don't think Devin Drew starts this Saturday. He may start by game 2 or 3, or he may just be the first one that is going to spell either Ty Robinson or Stephen Wynn or Colton Feist.
Maybe you just have a realistic rotation, and it doesn't really matter who goes in when. It could be that guy is in at crunch time.
And I'll be honest with you, to me, there's 5 guys that could be in a rotation, and I don't think the level would drop at all. And that is Ty Robinson, Devin Drew, Colton Feist, Stephen Wynn, and Nash Hutmacher. Nash Hutmacher has always been, the polar bear has always been this big brute of a guy, but the word you're hearing out of fall camp is that things are starting to click for him now as well.
Yep. I should have definitely put him higher up on the list, but you have so much experience. But Nash has been here for a while as well. This is his 3rd year, I believe, in the program. Is this the year that he takes a big step forward? Because physically he's a dude.
Yeah, no, I think it is. For me on the edge, here's what I would do. I would love to see Nebraska come out with this, and with Northwestern more than likely going to run the ball on the first play. I don't think it's what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be Ty Robinson as your only true down lineman defensively on the opening play. And then you've got O'Shawn Mathis, Garrett Nelson, Caleb Tanner, all 3 not with their hand on the ground, just waiting to come. And maybe those 3 start jumping around side to side and into the middle. They do the old monkey roll drill. And so Northwestern has no idea where they're coming from. Inside linebacker is easy. Luke Reimer, Nick Henrich. Nick Henrich. I think Garrett Snodgrass is poised to have a pretty solid season. And boy, Va Mauga Clements, he is put in the work, and it is finally paying off. I think he's going to get a ton of playing time this year. And let's not forget about Ernest Hausman at inside linebacker. He is a guy that I think is going to see playing time this year. Quentin Newsome, Tommy Hill as well at cornerback. Safety, I've got Omar Brown starting with Miles Farmer.
Yeah, I think it's a mystery to me right now. Miles Farmer and who? It could be Singleton. I think he's really talented, but he just got here. He's a JUCO transfer. Yep. Omar Brown just got here as well from Northern Iowa, but you're hearing all about the rise of Omar Brown. He started out as a cornerback. I think he was injured in the spring. He didn't play, and so he's just getting his feet wet as well. It's a little bit of a mystery who starts next to Miles Farmer's right for me right now.
Completely agree. And then I had Isaac Gifford and nickel as well. So I think but we just to lead back to Eric Chenander's comments about the depth. There's 2, 3, 4 guys at every position where you're like, you know what? We're hearing the lights come on for guys that have been here for a year or two. They've got the body size, they've got the raw abilities and the athleticism, but they just haven't put it all together within the structure of the defense. Well, now they're starting to. And I mean, we could have a scary defense. The key thing for that defense, though, is going to be stopping the run. They cannot give up 4.7 yards a carry or whatever it was last year, specifically in the fourth quarter. That's where they just got destroyed.
They did because they were worn down.
They totally worn down, and that's partly the offense's fault for what happened. But at the end of the day, this defense has the potential, I think, to be even better than last year.
And I think it's good that, I look at guys with experience in Ty Robinson and Colton Feast or Feist, Stephen Wynn from Alabama, Devin Drew, Nash Hutmacher. You got 5 guys that you can rotate in there, and you don't have to force a Jalen Weaver, who's a big physical specimen, maybe the biggest human being in Nebraska football for a while. I think he's up to 380, or it was at one time, 6'8", 380.
Monster.
But Masai Newsome, I thought he'd be maybe playing by now, or Ruquan Buckley. Those guys haven't been having to be rushed in, knowing that they're young in their career, freshmen and sophomores, that you can go to the transfer portal now and get guys that are capable of playing without much practice experience. I mean, Devin Drew and Stephen Wynn have done is in a relatively short amount of time to be in a starting conversation is impressive. Not having known the defense. So I think that's basically our black shirts, and it's our starting defense for the black shirts this year. So there's about 13 guys that we have getting black shirts according to that, because the starters are basically your black shirts. Quarterback Casey Thompson, that was just announced this week that it's his job. Running back, I've got Anthony Grant lining up behind Casey Thompson at running back. That'll be a really interesting conversation that the coaches, I think, will have right down to the end before they decide who is the starter. Teddy Prochazka, if he's back and healthy at left tackle, Nebraska might have something on that offensive line. I like the move of Turner Corcoran to left guard now that Nuri Nwili is not available this year. You got Trent Hickson, the center. You got Brock Bando, for me, the left guard. And then having a very good camp, according to all reports, is Bryce Benhart, who's really struggled throughout his career at right tackle. But he stays at right tackle. And so the hope is that Nebraska, that's my big concern on this entire offense is my big concern. So those are your top 7. You got Travis Vokalek starting at tight end, Omar Manning, a wide receiver, along with Trey Palmer. And then who is that third wide receiver? I don't know. Maybe it's a Ramir Johnson at times, or maybe it's Marcus Washington. Maybe it's Alante Brown, Oliver Martin. You've got some names that you can throw out there for Nebraska football. Those are my starters. Ramir is a starter, not a running back, but what do they call that position? The
wide back.
The wide back position now. And then you've got guys on the offensive line that could rotate in, like Kevin Williams Jr. You've got Hunter Anthony, transfer from Oklahoma State. Ethan Piper's there. Brant Banks is there. You have some decent depth. I don't know if you have any superstars like a Cam Jurgens last year.
I don't know that you do, but you don't need a superstar if that group functions as one and just simply does their job. I watched more highlights from Cam Jurgens. I don't know if it was a game today or yesterday, but
Yeah.
Cam Jurgens literally looks like he is angry at anybody that is on the opposing. He is out for blood. It is so fun to watch him just go destroy people, especially when they run like a screen and he gets to go hit a DB. It's truly comical. So for me,
he's the real deal. He's gonna he's gonna be a 10-year vet, I believe, in the NFL.
I totally agree.
If he doesn't get injured.
For me, I'm going to start on the offensive line. I right with you. Hickson, Corcoran, Benhart, Prohaska, and Bando. And then you've got 4 guys, I think, that have the ability that would be a solid, fill-in guy, but I don't know how much rotation you get with Brent Banks, Kevin Williams, Hunter Anthony, Ethan Piper. I don't know how much. I mean, if one of the others go down, who's going to step in and be the guy that is literally going to take their game to the next level? Don't know. We'll find out very quickly, I'm sure. Tight end Travis Vokalek, Nate Borkircher and Chancellor Brewington, both at tight end, have shown tons of promise this fall. And then the big question at tight end is, when is when is Thomas Fedoni going to be healthy?
He's been running steps. I mean, he's basically trying to get. It looks, you see the highlights of guys running steps, and at least he has full movement. It looks like he has full movement. But they're going to be really careful. Sean Beckton has said that we're going to be really careful with this guy because we don't want him getting another injury. But man, if you had him, this would be the time to have him, because outside of Vokalek, I don't see a guy that is a superstar potentially like Fedoni. Fedoni, we all thought that's a superstar.
And I'll be honest, I think from the true pass catching standpoint, not a knock on Travis Vokalek, I think he's an unbelievably well-rounded player, but I think Thomas Fedoni is a much bigger threat receiving wise.
Yeah, he's a receiver. He's a kind of a hybrid type of guy.
Yeah.
I like Borkircher. I think he could be your guy. I think he's sneaky. And then you have James Carney still there. You have AJ Rollins, who looked really good in the spring.
Chris Hickman. He's kind of gotten lost again because he's wide receiver, then he's a tight end. Then he's wide receiver, he's tight end. The rest of my starters, Casey Thompson. I have Gabe Irvin starting over Anthony Grant, and it's just I don't know. I think Anthony Grant is the real deal. I truly do, and looking forward to see.
Well, it's nice that nobody's won the job. In some ways, you could say, hey, again, you better have a good practice, or it's I don't know who's starting.
Exactly.
Even if you know who's starting, you say that as a coach.
True. Wide back, I think Ramirez easily the starter when they go into the set where they've got 2 wideouts and a running back / slot guy, however they're going to use the wide back. Brody Belt, Zach Weinmaster, 2 guys I think that are going to thrive in that position as well when Ramirez is on the sidelines or in the backfield. And then for me, wide receiver, Trey Palmer, Omar Matting. I think Alante Brown is going to be the third or the first guy that you're going to see if the wide back is not on the field. But Marcus Washington, Oliver Martin are 2 others I think that are going to see a ton of playing time. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda is another guy that I think once he is 100% healthy is going to be able to make some plays for us. And you still have Wyatt Lever, Camonte Grimes, who had a pretty decent spring game. The light's starting to come on a little bit for him. And then Janarian Bonner, I think, is a guy that's going to be a star here in a couple of years. And he may get a shot to get some plays. But
I think I think you're right. I think he's physically, he's really gifted.
We're going back to what we started this whole segment with, depth. There are some guys. There are some real dudes that are here, and I'm going to give props without meaning to knock the old coaches, but major props to the new offensive coaches: Ryan Applewhite, Mickey Joseph,
Donovan Raiola.
Donovan Raiola and Mark Whipple. I think they are getting more out of the players that were here before, and they are.
We've been fooled before, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I think that's very possible. To me, this thing is on offense with this offensive discussion. It's as simple as, is Donovan Raiola the real deal? Are these, is Teddy Prohaska the same guy that he was before he got injured? If he is, then I feel pretty comfortable. I still feel bad for Nebraska and for Nurden Nwili, because I think Nurden would have a great year this year. He graded out better than anybody on the offensive line last year, by far. And he was that one guy. Well, he's a starter. We know that. And then you have to move Corcoran to the other side. You would be really steady at guard. I think Brock Bando and how he plays this year is something that I'll keep an eye on. If he does have a great year and Hickson has a great year, that offensive line as a whole has a really good year, Nebraska's going to have a good football team. I think that's the big missing ingredient for me.
It truly is. That, like, every position group, I'm excited. I can't wait to see what they do. And that offensive line is just,
I don't know.
So unknown. I don't have a ton of confidence, but at the same time of saying I don't have a ton of confidence, I have confidence that with the way they're being taught how to play now with their coach, Donovan Raiola, and what we're hearing about what he's doing. And it's not the whole throwing up 15 times, whatever practice. It's just simply.
Do you think that actually happens 15 times the guys throw up?
I don't think. I think it
practice?
probably happens once or twice. But
would you eat breakfast if you knew you were going to throw up at practice later? I guess you want to get some nutrition in your body, but I've heard that for years that they have trash cans available because Zach his workouts are really hard. They have them when you're training. I don't know if they've always had them on the practice field though. Maybe they have.
Ever since Donovan Raiola has been our offensive line coach, they've needed him evidently.
Well, there was that quote this week from Scott Frost that said they've had GPS on the jerseys for years to measure, and Mike Riley did as well. It's been around for quite a while. You measure the exertion rate of particular players, and you can kind of see how they're doing and hold them out if they're really exhausted, or you can see that there's an issue there. He said that the offensive line has worked twice as hard as it has in previous years.
That's why I have hope that even though I don't have a ton of confidence that they're going to be great, I have hope that they're going to dominate certain defenses and certain defensive lines simply because they are going to be in better shape. They're going to be meaner because let's face it, when you get put through that type of a ringer in practice, you almost want to show off then against the guy that you're, lined up across from and just punish him.
Maybe it's the sarcasm in me, the cynicism in me that says you're working twice as hard this year as you have in previous years. What were you doing previous years? I mean, can you even
ask Greg Austin?
I don't have his phone number. I never really did have his phone number. I thought he was actually a very good coach, and I know he was loved by offensive linemen. But the last couple of years, after that first year with Divine Zigbo, and they just didn't have much at all on the offensive line or obviously running game.
Yeah,
that was a big concern. We're going to talk to Stephen M. Sipple on this show, and hopefully we'll talk to him throughout the season. It is Husker Rewind. Stephen M. Sipple is coming up next.
There's nothing quite like the Mercado by Certified Piedmontese beef. The Mercado offers unique ingredients you can't find anywhere else, open every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. The full-service butcher shop and retail store is wonderful for meat lovers with their exclusive Certified Piedmontese beef and assorted sausages, plus other quality meats, including pork, chicken, and a wide range of the freshest seafood. Plus, every Friday from 11 to 2, the Mercado serves up the best lunch in town on their Friday Feast menu. Stop in at the Mercado today at 84th and Havelock or visit their website at cpmercado.com to see current deals.
Hi, Sean Callahan here of HuskerOnline.com, inviting you to join us here on 93.7 The Ticket. Every Saturday morning now in our new time, we're on from 8 to 9 with the weekly Husker Online radio show. We'll give you the latest in recruiting. We'll talk about what's going on with both football, basketball, and we'll probably share a few stories from the inside. It's every Saturday morning right here on 93.7 The Ticket. It's the Husker Online radio show from 8 to 9 a.m.
My Shiro always goes the extra mile, stretches every dollar, puts others first. But now it's your time, Mom. Get free tips to help boost your retirement savings now at aceyourretirement.org/Shiro.
Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learn new instruments, start skateboarding. Whoa! Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back. Woohoo! Snarly move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie.
So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
Back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike.
That's old school.
Yeah?
No school like the old school.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
And welcome back to the Husker Rewind. My name is Mike Melby, the legend Tom Stevens across from me. And talk about the legend. I mean, one of the best columnists in the history of any type of sports writing, Stephen M. Sipple from On3.com will be joining us here shortly. Tom will be efforting the phone call. He's kind of under a deadline with I know an article he had to
I think he's typing
today.
out a story which was due at 6, so it's already 6:23 right now. So he's probably trying to get that thing out to his readers. So we come second, and I totally get that. If we have to move it to 6:45, our last segment, we'll talk to Stephen M. Whatever it takes. I did want to ask you this, because there's I everywhere I go. You know, Scott Frost has got to do this. He's got to do that. He's got to win at least 6 games. And then I talked to somebody else. 6 games? Are you kidding me? After 15 and 29? You got to win 8 games. That's the minimum expectation for this coaching staff. I'm just thinking what I want doesn't really matter. It's what the guy, Trev Alberts, who runs the program, really thinks is a successful football season. So that's a different thought process than what I have. I think, Nebraska should be winning 8 games, 9 games a year. We've fired coaches for only winning 9 games in the past. Frank Solich, Bo Pelini, both got fired after winning 9 games. So, but for me, again, I go back to what does the athletic director want? And I think he thinks, 6-6 is progress. No matter what you say, 6-6 is progress. And that's what Frost, I think, has to do to keep his job. Not for me, but for his athletic director.
I think he's fired at 6-6. I just do. I think 7-5 is a conversation. 8, he keeps his job. And the other thing, the caveat that goes into all of this stuff, though, how do we look? Do we still look like we don't know what we're doing? Are we still one of the most undisciplined teams in the country? Do we still have the 119th ranked special teams unit in the country? If all of that is the same and we're 7-5, I don't think he's back. If we look good, if we simply got outplayed, whatever the case may be, I think that's going to play a lot into it. But
they looked good last year, and they were 3-9. They were the best worst team in the history of college football.
I get that, but of the 9 losses, how many of them were losses due to the fact that they lost the game themselves? They didn't get beat; they lost 9 games last year. They didn't get beat 9 times. They lost 9 games.
Well, they lost the Oklahoma game because of special teams. They lost the Iowa game because of special teams. They lost the Michigan State game because of special teams. And it's happened multiple years. Those are 3 games right there. That gets you to 6-6, right?
Yep.
Those 3 games mean you're 6-6, and we're probably not talking about hot seat right now in Scott Frost.
No, probably not at all.
Not with that schedule, which was one of the toughest in college football, if not the toughest.
Yeah, and
football.
The other thing, a lot has been made about this year's schedule being a lot easier, and somebody finally said it. I always thought about it, and I'm like, I don't know that the Big Ten is ever easy, but, granted, Georgia Southern and North Dakota are not exactly, teams that you would expect to give Nebraska much of a fit. But at the same time, even Indiana, they're still a Big Ten team. Illinois, they're still a Big Ten team. I think Tom Allen's done halfway through the season is when he's going to get fired.
Right.
That team's atrocious. Brett Bielema, we'll see if he can, turn things around at Illinois, but they still are not where I think most people thought they might be by this time. But again, it's still Big Ten football. The schedule there's no Ohio State, but you still got Michigan. You still got Wisconsin. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. You want to go try to give our friend a call? Or
I could give Sipple a call, or we could hold it off until the next break. Either one. Actually, Steve Taylor had a comment as well. He wanted us to call him as well regarding the captain thing. So it sounds like we could have multiple conversations coming up.
If you want to go,
we don't have a producer at this point.
We don't yet.
But you want me to run over there?
Why don't you run over and see? Maybe Mr. Taylor would like to jump on with us.
All right, cool.
So last night at the Devaney Center, the Nebraska volleyball team went out. By the way, they're number 1 in the AVCA preseason poll, and they went out, had their scrimmage, the red-white scrimmage. The red team won 3-0. Maddie Kubik led the way, I believe, 13 kills. Becca Alec and Maggie Mendelson both wind up with pretty solid performances at middle blocker. Caitlin Horde, fantastic, as expected at middle blocker. The loss to Kayla Caffey is going to be felt. However, you have got two freshmen that are two really, really good freshmen that are going to help out in the middle for Nebraska volleyball. And, oh, by the way, it's always fun to talk about how the Nebraska spring game, and we had, 60,000, 70,000, 80,000 people going back to, I think, Scott Frost's first year that were at a spring game. Everybody's losing their minds about it. Folks, there were 8,000 people at the Devaney Center last night for Nebraska volleyball. That is absolutely crazy. And it shows exactly why. And Nebraska recruit commit Skylar Pierce was in town. She's from Kansas, a number one recruit in the class of, I believe, 2024. And she'll be coming here in a couple of years. But she on social media said, hey, I brought my people up here, wanted them to kind of get a feel of everything. And they were all absolutely blown away. And the question kept being, this is a practice. How did they stage this? It isn't staging. It is just the insanity and the craziness and the passion that Nebraska fans have for not just football, but volleyball as well. Basketball, let's face it, the team has struggled mightily the last couple of years. And lo and behold, we still would have 13, 14, 15,000 people at the Pinnacle Bank Arena for those games. So which Steve?
We've got Stephen M. Sipple, the legend.
Okay. Stephen M.
He
Sipple.
writes for On 3. How's that job going for you, Steve? You like it?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Thanks for being patient with me.
Oh,
I did have to finish a column. What
were you writing about?
Casey Thompson and his how he's I think he's the sort of the right man at the right time here. He turns 24. I've been saying this a lot. Turns 24 on October 3rd. He's been through a lot. He's been in big games, and he has a chip on his shoulder. And that just seems like a great mix to me.
Hey, Sip, quick question on Casey Thompson. Were you surprised that he was not named a captain?
No, hasn't been here long enough.
Okay.
I just don't think it's realistic. I mean, there's probably cases where a guy has come in, but I don't know how many cases there would be actually.
Darian Daniels is the only one I could think of.
I'm sorry?
Darian Daniels was the only one that I could think of.
Oh yeah, Darian Daniels. Yeah, that's a good point. I think some of this had to do with Casey had to win a job. And some of it's probably that. I just think it's rare. I mean, yeah, we might be able to find some outliers, but I think it's pretty rare for a guy to come in. I mean, maybe because he had the spring. I don't know. I think the captains they pick make a lot of sense.
Stephen M. Sipple of On3.com. We're talking about Casey Thompson and not being a captain. I wasn't surprised either because he's been here a relatively short amount of time. But what kind of year does he need to have for Nebraska to have a really good year? Not a great year, but just a good year.
He needs to have a good year, not a great year. I don't think he needs to be otherworldly at all. I don't think Nebraska's in that type of situation as a team. They have players around him that are good. I mean, I think it's pretty clear there's enough weapons over there right now to make an offense work at a level that can get them to a bowl game. As long as they get out of their own way, that's the big thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that, a lot of that is a quarterback discussion. I defended Adrian all the time, but he made critical mistakes at critical times. And I think, Casey is not going to be a perfect quarterback. I don't expect that. But I'll tell you what I know about Casey, and I've sat down with him twice. I listened to him. And here's a good thing about Casey. There's stuff on tape. I mean, he's proven. And what I'm saying is he's very mindful. I mean, this is not a erratic quarterback. He's not an erratic kid. He's very step by step oriented. He's very game plan oriented. He's very meticulous. You heard him today. Maybe you heard him today at the podium. He's a perfectionist. So here's the deal. I don't think he's going to get in a lot of trouble. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's going to get you out of a lot of trouble. But I don't think he's going to get you in trouble. So that's a start. That's a good place to start, I think, especially for an opener.
Well, but
I'd be really surprised if he makes critical kind of game deciding mistakes. And fortunately, we saw Adrian do that quite a bit.
I was just going to say, he doesn't have Adrian Martinez here to make the mistakes that he's got to get us out of and fix. So that's a plus.
Easy.
Steve, I want to ask you, we're joined by On3's Stephen M. Sipple. And Sip, I want to ask you about position groups. And would you please give me your position group that you're the most confident in and the one you're the least confident in?
I'm most confident. I am most confident in the edge rushers. And I would say running backs are right behind. Edge rushers and running backs. The least confident offensive line. I mean, I just can't. It's not that I think those guys have a lot of potential, but considering the level of frustration, and times just level of incompetence we've seen in recent years, it's hard to have a lot of confidence in that group. They got to prove themselves, and that's what everybody's watching. It's probably the most critical position group.
Probably I'm guessing you get this question because I do all the time. What does Scott Frost have to do to be here another year after this year? And some say just get to a bowl game, just get to 6-6, have a chance of being 7-6. But others say, and you got to get to 8, you got to get to 9. For you, what is the minimum expectation for Scott Frost as far as what Trev might be thinking?
Oh, as far as Trev might be thinking, I don't say this lightly. It's not like I don't have a pretty good feel for these things. If I were Frost, I'd be telling my staff, we better win 8 to be safe. I don't think that 7 gets Scott out of the woods. And I'm talking about regular season games. I don't think 7 gets him out of the woods. I think 8 could. The line's that fine, and it's continuing in that vein. I don't think 6 would do it. And I don't mind saying it because I think Scott might tell you that he doesn't deserve to be back if it's 6. I think that staff is Scott. I know Scott very well. I've known him for years. He's very competitive. 6 isn't what he wanted in year 5. 6 is not where he expected to be. And if they would decide to move on, I think Scott would completely understand. I hate to say that. I shouldn't go that far in speaking for him, but I've talked to enough of those guys to know they don't want to win 6. I mean, they want to win. They want to win 8 or 9 or 10.
Okay.
Travis Fisk doesn't want to win 6 games this year.
Yeah.
Nobody. They're not in that. They got better talent than that. So, yeah, I'd say if I were evaluating it, I think you'd have a hard decision at 7.
So with
8, you could say let's keep going. 6, it'd give me a lot of pause.
With that in mind, what do you think? Nebraska wins 9 games if complete that sentence.
If Casey's stable, if the weapons on offense are as good as I think, if the line is just good enough, and the defense holds teams below 4.1 yards per carry or that range, and anything in the 4.2 or above range, I get pretty nervous.
Okay, so you said that Coach Frost probably went to the staff and said, gentlemen, we need to win 8. Of his assistants, who do you think Nebraska's best overall coach is? Because I could make an argument for several.
Yeah, I think they got pretty good staff over there now. Best overall coach right now. I don't know who the best is. I'm really confident in Whipple in this environment. I mean, I just like to answer it that way. In this environment, very weighty. It's a weighty season, a lot of pressure every game. It's going to be intense. It could get kind of rocky. I like that. I like that demeanor he has. I like that resume. I like his age. I like what he's been through as a head coach, as a coordinator in the NFL. Not as a head coach in the NFL, but as an assistant in the NFL, which is as high pressure as it gets. And then as a head coach who's been fired, nothing's going to shake Whipple. I love having Whipple in that role, and I love having Casey in his role. Yeah. And I think all these guys are ready for this. They know. I mean, this is now a more veteran staff. Yeah. And some guys that it said, not me, I'm not going to give myself any credit, but there were guys initially, and I've said this on the radio before, that said, hey, he didn't hire enough experience. He didn't bring enough experience with him. Well, Mickey's 55, Bush is 56, Whipple's 65. There's an injection there, and I think it makes sense.
You mentioned Mark Whipple, and he's an interesting cat. He'll say some things that are a little bit, take you back a little bit in that. I remember him saying in spring, for example, that he wants quarterbacks that are jerks. And he said Kenny Pickett was that way. And Ben Roethlisberger was that way. He doesn't necessarily need a guy that's everybody's buddy. Maybe you want somebody more like a Tommy Frazier is what I gathered from those comments. What'd you take?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't want to go too far. If you're a jerk, you better perform. And I don't mind that. I hope I wouldn't mind it because I'm kind of a jerk myself.
You are not a jerk.
I tend to grab towards them. But no, as a quarterback, I think it's fine. I think I like that kind of demeanor. You got to hold people accountable. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? And those conversations aren't always pleasant. In fact, they're usually not pleasant. So, who's talked a lot about that is Garrett Nelson. He's not afraid to call it like he sees it. And again, he's talked about it. It's uncomfortable to do that. Casey seems, I'll tell you what, you guys notice it. Watch him. Just watch him. He's very mature. I mean, I'm not saying he's a perfect quarterback. I'm not saying that at all. But he's going to be 24 on October 3rd. And he knows what it takes. And that's a good place to start, especially, again, in such a weighty season.
This is the Husker Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. I'm Mike Melby. That's Tom Stevens on the phone with us from on3.com. It's Stephen M. Sipple. Sip, I want to ask you a quick question. We're talking about Casey Thompson and the quarterback play that is needed for Nebraska this year. I want to throw out, if Casey were going to need to miss some time, a game or a second half or whatever happens due to injury or whatever, how confident are you in Chubba Purdy?
That's a good question, Mike. I have limited knowledge of Chubba. I'll tell you, I'll answer it this way, Mike. The one thing I think we have to understand in this conversation is that Logan Smothers made a pretty good push for number 2 in camp. All right. It wasn't as cut and dried as it seemed probably for most of camp, in that this is going to be Chubba or Casey. What I've heard in the last week is that Logan made a realistic push for number 2, had a good camp, and at least put himself in a position where if they're in a more of a run game situation, maybe if they're up and want to salt away clock a little bit and want to go to the ground, or if a defense is showing susceptibility, you might see Logan. But I don't even want to go too far with that, because I don't think it's totally about that. I think Logan's legit in that conversation. So first of all, I'd say it that way. I would be confident in Logan, and I think I would be confident in Chubba. It's just Chubba is so young. I mean, he's such a kid. He's such a kid too. When you talk to him, it's much different than talking to Casey. Yeah. Not in a bad way. Just he's a young kid. Yeah. I mean, he said to me this summer that he has to remind him. He has so much fun with the guys. I mean, this is just Chubba talking, and he's let down his guard a little. He has so much fun with the guys. He's such a fun. And if you're around Chubba, he's very funny. He's very fun loving. He's just a great guy. And he says he has to remind himself to dial in sometimes, Yeah. And that's maturity. We've all probably been through that. Sometimes you just have to be able to shift pretty quickly from fun to work. And I think Chubba, he admitted that he has to remind himself sometimes. Hell, he had to remind himself the speed of the game. He admitted that when he started off camp, he said it was a bit of a shock to his system that he had forgotten how fast the game moved. I don't think Casey had that problem. You know, like I said, he's 23 years old. He didn't need any reminders. Chubba did. It's different. So they're different. And I think I'd be pretty confident in his playmaking ability. But if Chubba came in, you just have to watch how he handles that pressure.
That's, you know what, I greatly appreciate the answer. It's something that I know most fans did not know, that Logan Smothers made that big push. So thanks for the information. Sip, before we let you go, I want to get one more quick question. We are 6 days away. What are your expectations? You're probably not going to give us a prediction because this is our last time we'll be on before, obviously, the game, because you're going to have a prediction that's going to come out later in the week. If you want to share it ahead of time, you can. But what do you expect the game? How do you expect the game to go? And then what do you expect to learn from the game?
I expect a close. I mean, my gut tells me close game. What I expect to learn a lot. Mainly, we don't know exactly what the offense is going to look like, except, okay, and this is probably, so I don't ramble. I'll just zero in on this part. We know that the quarterback's not going to lead the team in rushing as has been the case the last 2 seasons. So it's going to look different from that standpoint. There's going to be more conventional run game. And what does that look like? I don't even know. I mean, I don't care about ratio. I think run-pass ratio depends on score, mainly. But it also, what you've heard a lot of is that's a strong stable of running backs, and the offensive line's a good run blocking unit. So what's the run game going to look like is what I'm getting at. I mean, what's it going to look like with a powerful, elusive back like Anthony Grant, with a kid with kind of special open field talent and A.J. Allen, with a kid like Gabe Irvin, who's literally kicking at the stalls right now, wants to play, wants to show himself so bad his voice shakes when you talk to him. What's that all going to look like? I have a feeling it's going to look pretty good, but I want to see it.
6 days. We'll find out. When do you leave for Dublin?
I leave tomorrow afternoon.
All right. Well, have fun. You riding with Robin Washut and Sean Callahan and that type of thing? And
yeah, the On3 crew and Greg Peterson, and beautiful. I'm really looking forward to it.
Nice. Well, have fun. Be careful and be safe. We love you.
Hey, Mom, thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for being patient. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Sip, just so you know, I promise you, anytime you come on, we will never, ever tell you to shut up.
No. As far as you know.
You're a rarity, man. So I like things that are unique. So thank you.
Steven Sipple from Shut Up Sipple and On3.com, the legendary Steve Sipple. Let's get the break and close out the show. Coming up next, it's Husker Rewind.
93.7 The Ticket is proud to provide listeners with daily opportunities to win contests and prizes on our airwaves, and would like to take this opportunity to remind you of a couple rules. All participants must be 21 or older and wait 30 days after winning a prize before participating in another contest. Once you win, you have 30 days to pick up your prize at the KNTK Studios, 330 North 48th Street in Lincoln, or your prize will be forfeited. Thank you for participating in our contest, and thank you for listening to 93.7 The Ticket.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you want to come and text us,
if you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
this is Mommy's jam,
then surely you'll check NHTSA.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at NHTSA.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
More of the Sunday Rewind is coming your way next.
60% of the time, it works every time.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
And welcome back to the Husker Rewind. I'm Mike Melby. Tom Stevens sits across from me. Huge thank you to On3's Stephen M. Sipple for joining us during that last segment. And, you know, the one thing that happens when you get, into your mid-40s and then late 40s, then you hit 50, and all of a sudden it just, like, you just want to, I don't know, tell people.
Get off my lawn.
It just gets so frustrating.
I've never actually told anybody to get off my lawn, but I've always wanted to. Did I ever tell you the story that I lived next to this guy and I thought I was being nice and I mowed into his lawn? Have you ever done that? Like, you don't want to just do the cutoff point. You don't want to be like, I'm so rigid that I can't go an inch into your yard. So I went like maybe 3 feet into his yard, and he knocks on the door. He goes, and he doesn't even call me or call for me. He just tells my wife that, your husband just went 3 feet in my lawn and I cut it in a certain way and I don't like it. So just stop it. And it's like, what the hell? But I got, when I talked about it on the text line, people were like, he's right. I cut my lawn a certain way. And if somebody mowed 3 feet in my lawn, I'd be a little mad. I thought I was doing him a favor. You would never complain if somebody shoveled snow into your driveway a little bit, because you sometimes do that. You don't want to just cut it off, at your side. So you scoop a little bit on their side.
So, Tom, what you're saying is that you really want to come over and start mowing my yard for me. I am 100% fine with this. I have a family friend that he was my parents' neighbor out in Alma for years, and then he moved away to Salt Lake City. He's actually retired here in Lincoln.
Right.
I was over at his house dropping some stuff off for my parents, and his neighbor in the terrace between the sidewalk and the street mowed like 5 feet into his yard.
Yeah.
And he's talking to me, and he goes, whoa, no, wait a minute, I'll be right back. He literally goes out while the guy is then he's like,
so this is a deal that's a big issue for other people.
And he starts yelling at him, like genuinely.
I thought it was being nice.
Yelling at him.
I thought it was being nice.
That's
but apparently it's a big issue, apparently.
Okay,
so your nominee for Get Off My Lawn.
Okay, so my nominee for Get Off My Lawn is Texas head coach Steve Sarkisian, because I took his comments about bad apples
about Casey Thompson
and warts to mean indirectly he's talking about Casey Thompson, the guy who, by the way, who was playing with a hand that most human beings could not have even picked up a football and thrown it, and he was your starting quarterback, played through the pain, and did everything he could. I get it. Things went sideways. You guys lost 6 in a row. You're lucky to still have your job. But to say that to me is just childish, immature, and unprofessional. Steve Sarkisian can get off my lawn.
I'll pile on yours. I sometimes do that because I don't always have one every week, but I always want to give you the opportunity to nominate somebody if you have somebody. And Sarkisian seems like always a good nominee.
Well, and you know me, I'm always angst-filled. So
you're not always angry.
I'm angry at somebody.
Back in the day, you were a little angst-filled. I think you've let loose a lot of that. And I kind of missed old Mike that used to be angry a little bit more often than you are now.
I get in a lot fewer bar fights now, though.
Have you ever actually been in a bar fight?
I was in 3 in one night.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Because I've always wanted to be in one bar fight, but then I've never found somebody that was small enough. I mean, because everybody's pretty much too big for me. So there's really no desire to get beat up. I want to go, if I'm going to get in a bar fight, I want to win it. And I just never found anybody that I could beat.
I didn't say I was ever very good at any bar fights I was in. I just happened to be in a couple.
Nebraska, we have this conversation about recruiting about Mickey Joseph, I think once a week. But there's another guy that he's in on, and it doesn't look like the odds are great that Nebraska is going to pull it off. But Zalance Hurd, Nebraska is in his top 5, and he is a 5-star offensive tackle, 6'5", 300. He's from Monroe, Louisiana. So obviously Mickey has something to do with his recruitment. He's set September as his announcement date, along with Nebraska, LSU, Florida, Florida State, and Houston are on his list. But I don't expect both Brian Applewhite, who I guess is also in on the recruitment of this offensive lineman, and Mickey Joseph. I don't think Nebraska's going to get this guy. Maybe they will. But it's still impressive to me that they're probably not going to get this guy, and Mickey's still in on guys like this. You know what I mean? I mean, you give him an opportunity, and he's going to make it close for Nebraska, especially if they start winning football games.
I agree. And this Zalance Hurd to me reminds me a little bit of Andrus Peat, who his brother was going here, and Pelini thought he was going to get him to come here, and ultimately he goes to Stanford. But he was a game changer on the offensive line, and would have been for Nebraska and for Bo Pelini. And quite honestly, we may still have Pelini as a coach if he would have come here. I mean, there's a couple of recruiting losses. I mean, granted, is me and us against the world was getting a little old, but Zalance Hurd's a guy that he's going to play in the NFL for a long time.
Probably will.
And he's going to be a spectacular player for 3 years wherever he does go to school.
So Mickey's the best recruiter on the staff, right? Who's second best for you?
Bill Bush, I think
Yeah.
Travis Fisher is just sneaky good too.
Yeah, he can recruit defensive backs.
Yeah.
Or any position, really.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys didn't stay from Florida that he got to Lincoln, but I think he's really good at evaluating defensive backs and then target them.
Yep.
He knows what he wants, and he knows that he can make certain guys pretty good. So that's a good answer. Before we leave, let's talk a little Husker hoops. Ernie Ziegler and the staff of Fred Hoiberg. Well, Ernie's now on the staff of Fred Hoiberg because he's been added to the staff. He came, where was he? Mississippi State for the last 7 years with Ben Howland, who was fired this past year after going 18-16. But Ziegler worked with Howland on some pretty good teams. UCLA and Pittsburgh both made big runs in the NCAA tournament. I think UCLA, that was the year they went to the national title game even.
Yeah, I think they did.
They'd lost the national title game. But Ziegler, you like that background, apparently good recruiting contacts. You like the hire.
I love the hire. The recruiting contacts, I always thought somehow, some way, for whatever reason, Ben Howland was going to wind up at Nebraska, and I was super excited about it.
Yeah.
And it just never happened, and this is almost as good, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think it's interesting what Hoiberg is doing because he's an offensive guy.
Yeah.
But he's hiring guys with defensive backgrounds now.
Well, let's face
Ziegler's another guy from, Howland was always known for defense. Remember, Steve Peterson hired him at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, let's face it, after the last 2 years in Husker Hoops defense, we needed a little help.
Well, I'm just, because you had Adam Howard, who has that zone defensive background, and now you had Ziegler, who also kind of has the recruiting thing, but is known for being on staffs with defensive head coaches. So it's interesting to see how this will all work out for Nebraska basketball.
Yeah, hopeful. I am very, very hopeful. Yeah. I love Coach Hoiberg, and hopefully they can get things turned around.
Speaking of hope, 6 days till kickoff in Dublin. We'll be back with a recap of that game next week.
How fun is that going to be?
How fun will that be? And hopefully we'll hear from you. We are out. Honda of Lincoln Hotline, Sutter Haven text line. We thank you. We'll talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye.
See you.
In every office, there's two types of people. There are those who bring in bagels and those who eat the bagels that someone else brought in. Everybody likes the first person. Be that first person. Weekday mornings at 7:30, you have a chance to win a business box of bagels from Bagels & Joe. All you have to do is shut up Sipple. 2 questions for you, 2 for Sip. Win and the bagels are yours. Lose, well, you don't